Good government needs good propaganda, bloviated Nazi minister Joseph Goebbels leading up to the 1936 Berlin Olympics. A prime example of nationalistic competition gone grimly wrong, Goebbels pushed the radical belief of Aryan tribal superiority. With the 2022 Beijing Olympics on the horizon amid stark international tension, it raises the question: to what extent is nationalism in international sporting competition detrimental to world diplomatic relations? Due to the influence of sport, curtailing nationalism in international sports would prove beneficial because nationalism is detrimental to diplomacy via the creation of a culture of hatred, inflammation of racial tension, and commercialization and politicization of competition between citizenry. To begin, the effects of nationalism in sport create a culture of hatred towards opposing teams and countries. As asserted by George Orwell, a famous dystopian novelist from the mid-20th century, even if one didn't know from concrete examples that sport leads to orgies of hatred, one could deduce it from general principles. These principles would include the focus of and invention of, as Orwell puts it, a games cult. As further explained by Nasser Amin, postgraduate at the School of Oriental and African Studies, from the Middle Eastern perspective, the battle for respect and recognition is played out on Western terms. The importance of respect for a nation on the world stage could easily overtake a population and spark violence. As continued by Orwell, as soon as you feel that you and some other larger group will be disgraced if you lose, the most savage combative instincts are aroused. Avoiding savage combative instincts while dealing with the fragility that is diplomatic relations is naturally important when maintaining proper alliances. As an illustration of sport nationalism gone wrong, the conflicts in El Salvador and Honduras that were sparked by military combat were due to a football team competition. Resisting nationalism is necessary because it would significantly help stop hate culture created by win-focused competition. Another way in which nationalism in sports deteriorates cosmopolitan friendship is through inflammation of racial tension. To start, the Bosnian genocide is an example of nationalism taken to the extreme. As political science and public affairs professor Jennifer Schiff describes, the cohesion of the Serbian people contributed to their aggression in the 1990s. Especially relevant is the prevalence of football in Serbian society, which was seen as the reason for much of the drive behind the genocide. A win for Serbia was seen as justification for superiority. Orwell accurately describes a similar relationship, testifying, you play to win, and the game has little meaning unless you do your utmost to win. Reining in the power of nationalism to inspire such violent acts would help to cut down the prevalence of racial conflicts and international tension more broadly. Although some pundits, such as Rich Lowry of National Review, may argue that nationalism inspires pride in a nation, this view fails to observe the far-reaching ends of such a proposition. If it is not clearly defined as its more tame counterpart, patriotism, nationalism will allow, as countered by Kim Holmes, executive vice president and writer in the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, any one of us could take any tradition that has a definitive history and redefine it to our liking. Instead of promoting the 19th century idea of nationalism, pushing for clearly defined patriotism provides a better solution. Instead of the offense involved with nationalism, patriotism is expected to deal with the defense of a nation and its values, as explained by dictionary.com. This would allow other countries to reap the benefits of nationalism while avoiding the many detrimental effects. Finally, nationalism is detrimental to international relations because it opens the commercialization and politicization between teams. As embodied by former President Theodore Roosevelt, don't ever get into the frame of mind which regards sports as constituting to end to which all or even a major portion of your energies should be placed. Roosevelt's words help to exemplify the way in which sports have become commercialized and corrupted. Professor of Law James Nofziger delineates high visibility threats to free and fair competition, for example, doping, commercialization, and political manipulation of athletic activity because of uncertain and amid controversy about the appropriate mechanisms for making decisions and resulting in resolving disputes. Nationalism in sport can also become politically commercialized. For context, a study conducted in 25 countries for the International Journal of Sociology found that international sport creates opportunities for governments to demonstrate various types of superiority. This opportunity commercializes the sport for more than individual gain. This study also adds that when sport provides a useful function, it is usually co-opted by politics. This idea is later expounded upon by Roosevelt, saying athletic proficiency is a mighty good servant, and like so many other good servants, a mighty bad master. While national pride may be appealing in some aspects, it can be stomach-turning in others. The manner in which sports has been perverted towards nationalistic goals is also detailed by Hannu Karulainen, a Finnish ambassador, writing, "Sport generates both cooperation and conflict, being a political weapon to strike an adversary with. Turning sports away from nationalism would help to bring back the original purpose of sporting events. Lessening the detriments of nationalism in international sports to cosmopolitan relations, such as wounding the spirit of sport, provoking racial tension, and profit-orienting sport between foreign bodies, would naturally prove beneficial to global correspondence as a whole. Although a possible way to do this would be to reframe how international sports are conducted, such as removing national identity of teams and competitors altogether, this poses many limitations. As explained by Sage Publications, thus, if indeed politics are about managing conflict and constituting identities, the question isn't about whether sport is political, it is about how sport is political. An answer to the question without removing national identity is by establishing multiple organizations designed to enforce neutrality and improving the ability of those organizations that are already in place, such as the Supreme Council for Sport in Africa and the International Olympic Committee. Additionally, promoting patriotism would fill the void left by nationalism. Taking action against nationalism would help to prevent a repeat of the 1936 Olympics and the following catastrophe.
All right, Gabe, thank you. Appreciate that. My first question for you. How did you select the strategies you used to gather information or conduct your research? Were they effective?
So first, what I decided to do when researching was I would go through and I would find some anecdotes and some examples, such as the conflicts between El Salvador, but I also found some examples in the West Carolina Journalist that described two college teams and how they interacted, and then I was able to compare that to how sports interact on a international level. And then I would go about afterwards and find data such as the study in the International Journal of Sociology, which looked at 25 different countries and how nationalism existed in their communities.
Okay. Thanks. And the second question, how did you use the conclusions and questions of others to advance your own research?
Some conclusions that I utilized to help describe my answers would include, as I mentioned before, the International Journal of Sociology, which they basically broke down where nationalism is most prominent, which they found it becomes more prominent the more east you go. And I utilized that to make a basis on how to look at the different perspectives of nationalism abroad.
All right, thanks.